I started in the music business by being lucky enough to be born into a musical family. My mother was a rather fine violinist who had studied professionally. My grandmother was the local piano teacher in the small town in North Carolina where I was born 7,000 or 8,000 years ago, it seems like. And she had many dozens of pupils a week. She had a lovely Steinway baby grand piano in our living room. And there was a little baby piano beside, which was given to me by my grandfather for my 4th birthday, which came from a venerable music house in New York, and he had spent a fair amount of money on it because they wanted me to be exposed to good music and so forth. To make a short story longer, my grandmother was giving a little piano lesson and a little piece by Clementi with a young pupil, and the story goes that I came into the living room and began to play verbatim the melody line to follow what the pupil was playing on the baby piano, yeah? And so the Steinway was rattling away and I was ding, 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 ding. Well, of course, that was either the greatest single mistake of my life or the most wonderful thing I ever chanced to do, because my grandmother immediately said, "Yeah, talent, Lord of the Flies," and I was immediately chained to the most god-awful Gulbranson upright piano you can imagine in her boudoir, and forced to practice for the next 3 or 4 years Czerny and Hanon and scales and technical exercises, very much of the old school, you know, which believed that you built everything on a fantastic technical base and everything else through life, love, death, just life in general would sort out the musical end and the appassionata. You see what I mean? Well, I didn't really think very much of my grandmother at the time. She didn't let me go out and play baseball and basketball with my colleagues. I loved that sort of thing. I wanted to be with my kids and of my own age. In fact, I didn't like her at all. I tended to worship the ground she was going to be buried under, because she had this huge thing of, you must practice, practice, practice until it hurts. No pain, no gain. So the last thing I wanted to be was a classical musician, pianist, or organist, or anything. But as it transpired, I went one day when I was about 6 years old to the local Methodist preaching palace, which had a beautiful old Feldgemacher pipe organ, highly stenciled 16-foot pipes in the front. I still have photographs. And the organist was a bit of an old harridan. He didn't want anyone entering his little choir loft and organ loft. That was his fiefdom. No one was allowed therein. And so I took matters into my own hands. I came back one Saturday, found a Coca-Cola bottle under a magnolia tree around the back of the church, broke out a window, because it was all locked, broke out a window in the fellowship hall where the Methodists have rites of coffee every Sunday after service, pulled myself through, and in doing so inflicted, oh, good gracious me, this is show and tell, I know. Let's not get too carried away. Virgil would be proud. There's the first great gash, the second great gash, 25 plus stitches to repair. I had never seen blood before, and I'd never played a pipe organ before, but I was not to be put off. So I found a tea towel, a kitchen towel in the kitchen, wrapped it around my arm, went upstairs, and this was this wonderful old building that smelled of sort of musky, damp fitted carpets, beautiful stained glass windows, Akron-style preaching building. And there I went up to the loft, and there the console was open. All the stop tongues, all made of ivory, were there beckoning. There were 2 switches, one red and one black. Of course, I pushed the red. Meant stop, so I thought black might mean go. Chink, pushed it. I heard this sort of antediluvian sort of boomf start 3 stories below, and up came the air, groaned into the reservoirs. The organ came to life, few little ciphers that wouldn't quite go away until you were ready to start. The organ really was at the end of its natural or unnatural life. Anyway, I was bleeding all over the place. I played, tried everything. Finally, I felt quite dizzy, and I can tell you that blood and ivory do not mix. You can't really clean blood off ivory very easily. And I went home. My grandmother and mother met me. They thought I'd run away from home. My grandfather, with whom we lived, they loved me to death, but they were going to make sure I had fair and unusual punishment for this. Dr. Orman was called. He stitched me up. That's when doctors actually came to your house, and they were your family doctor. That was in the early 50s, you see. And so after that, my grandfather's strop, his belt, came out, and my derriere, I could not feel anything on my backside for at least 10 weeks, and even to this day. Do you know how older people say when they go in cold weather, oh, the feeling in my arms and my legs and my buttocks and stuff, I can't feel. I know exactly how they feel, because I mean, sometimes I sit down and I have no feeling at all, and that's my grandfather's fault, but that was my introduction to the organ. When I had been at the church, and playing. I went back in and they had left the organ chamber unlocked. Fools! And I went in and I was pulling reed pipes apart and blowing, doing everything you're not supposed to do. You know, there's this absolute, anathema is putting a child in pipe organ. You just don't do it, And I was picking up pipes, dropping them, I was standing on the reservoirs, putting the trim on and watching everything shake. It was just like a Rube Goldberg contraption, and I'd never seen anything. I suddenly came alive, and I had a reason for living. Not that I didn't before, but suddenly this musical background of scales and Czerny and all this technical stuff suddenly translated into the next step that I would then move right along and love the King of Instruments.